The
Oh, what a
desert highway
lovely
stretched
dog.
endless under the
Thanks. My
Arizona
name's Shadow.
sun, a
Please
ribbon of
sit with
black
me.
asphalt
I'd
shimmering
love
in the
to.
100-degree heat. Hank Mercer felt the vibration of his Harley-Davidson through every bone in his body, the steady rumble that had been his companion for 40 years, since before the Marines, before the wars, before the leg. His left leg, the
Beautiful
one that
day for a
ended at the
ride.
knee, now
It
replaced by
is. And what a
titanium and
good dog
carbon
you
fiber,
have.
He's
that
the
never
best,
quite
aren't you,
felt
boy?
like his own.
I told
He
you to
reached down
back
without
off.
thinking, three
You don't
taps against
scare
the
me.
prosthetic.
Big mistake.
Tap,
Hey,
tap,
get
tap.
your dog.
The ritual. Always three. Some men crossed themselves before a journey. Hank touched the leg that wasn't there anymore. Behind him, strapped to the sissy bar, a German shepherd named Gunnar sat with the patience of a saint. 105 degrees, wind like a furnace, and that dog never complained, never whined, just watched the road with dark, intelligent eyes that had seen things most dogs never would. Explosive ordnance disposal. That's what they'd both done in different ways. Hank had dismantled bombs with hands that still remembered the weight of wire cutters, the sweat on his palms when he made the cut. Gunnar had found them with a nose that could detect C4 at 50 yards. Both retired now, both carrying ghosts. The sign appeared through the heat haze Pine Ridge. 15 miles. Hank felt something tighten in his chest. 20 years. 2 decades since Raymond Aldridge had pushed him out of the way of a fireball in Fallujah, taking the blast that should have killed them both. Ray died. Hank lived minus one leg and plus a lifetime of wondering why he deserved to walk away when Ray didn't. Well, walk was a generous term. He throttled down, let the Harley coast for a moment. Gunnar shifted behind him, a subtle weight change that meant the dog sensed something. Animals always knew. They felt the invisible currents that humans missed: the approach of storms, the presence of danger, the weight of a man's grief. On the handlebars, two dog tags swung from the rearview mirror. Both silver, both worn smooth. One said Sergeant H. Mercer, USMC. The other said Staff Sergeant R. Aldridge, USMC. The second tag shouldn't have been there. It should have been buried with Ray in Arlington. But Connie Aldridge had pressed it into Hank's hand at the funeral, her fingers cold despite the Virginia summer heat. "He'd want you to have it," she'd whispered. "He'd want you to keep going." So Hank had kept going. For 20 years he'd kept going. The highway curved and Pine Ridge appeared like a mirage, a small town clinging to existence in the high desert, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and strangers were noticed before they crossed the town line. Population 3,200 according to the faded sign. A main street lined with buildings that remembered better days. A diner, a gas station, a church with a white steeple that needed paint. And somewhere in this town, Constance Aldridge waited. The letter had come 3 weeks ago. Handwritten, the script shaky but still elegant. Connie was 81 now, and her hands weren't what they used to be. "Hank, I know it's been years since we spoke. I know you carry your own burdens, and I have no right to add to them. But I need to see you. It's about Ray, about what really happened. Please come. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. The 20th anniversary is next week. Come early if you can." Connie, what really happened? Those 3 words had kept Hank awake for 3 weeks straight. He'd been there. He'd seen Ray die. What else was there to know? But Connie wouldn't have written unless she meant it. And a man didn't ignore a widow's request, especially not the widow of the brother who'd saved his life. So Hank had gassed up the Harley-loaded Gunner into the custom sidecar he'd built for long trips and pointed the bike east from Tucson. 200 miles of thinking time, 200 miles of remembering. The Iron Brotherhood patch on his leather jacket caught the sunlight as he leaned into the turn onto Main Street. The patch was worn, the thread fading, but the symbol remained clear. A motorcycle wheel wrapped in chain, the words Tucson. Chapter arched above it. He'd been riding with the Brotherhood for 15 years. Good men, all of them. Veterans, mostly. Men who understood that some conversations didn't require words, that some silences were holy. Hank had called Luther Kane last night from a motel in Gila Bend. "Need backup," he'd said simply. Luther, wrenched to the club so named for his ability to fix anything with an engine, hadn't hesitated. When and where? Pine Ridge. Going tomorrow. Something's not right. We'll be there." That was brotherhood. No questions, no debate. Just the certainty that when one man called, the others came. Hank guided the Harley down Main Street, Gunner's weight a steady presence. The dog's head swiveled left and right, cataloging everything. A woman watering flowers outside a hardware store. A teenage boy washing a truck. An old man sitting on a bench watching the stranger ride through town with eyes that missed nothing. Small towns were like that. Everyone noticed. Everyone remembered. The diner sat on the corner of Main and First, a low building with a red neon sign that said Rosie's in cursive letters. Half the letters were burnt out. It read, OIE. Hank pulled into the gravel parking lot, killed the engine. The sudden silence felt heavy after hours of highway noise. Gunner hopped down from behind him with the ease of practice, shook himself once, then sat at attention. Good dog, always knew the drill. Hank swung his right leg over, then carefully maneuvered the prosthetic. The balance was second nature now, but he never took it for granted. One wrong shift, and he'd be on the ground, and getting up at 67 with a fake leg wasn't the graceful operation it had been at 40. He stood stretched. His back popped in 3 places. The jacket felt heavy in the heat, but he didn't take it off. A man wore his colors. That was the code. The diner's door chimed when he pushed it open. Cool air hit him like a blessing. Air conditioning and the smell of coffee and frying bacon. Civilization. Inside, Rosie's looked like every other small-town diner in America. Vinyl booths along the windows, a counter with red stools, a pie case that probably held the same 3 pies it had held for 30 years. Apple cherry pecan. A handful of customers looked up when Hank entered. A middle-aged couple in one booth, 2 construction workers at the counter, and in the far corner, a booth by the window, a woman with white hair and a face that Hank would have recognized anywhere. Constance Aldridge. She'd aged, of course she had, they all had. But there was something else, a tightness around her mouth, a shadow in her eyes that hadn't been there at Ray's funeral. This wasn't just the weight of 20 years. This was fear. Hank walked toward her, Gunner at his heel. The dog's nails clicked on the linoleum. Every step measured, deliberate. The prosthetic made a slightly different sound than his real foot, a detail most people wouldn't notice, but Hank heard every time. Connie's eyes found his. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she smiled and some of the shadow lifted. Hank Mercer, still riding that beast. Still breathing, Connie. That's more than Ray got. The words came out harsher than he'd intended, but Connie didn't flinch. She just gestured to the seat across from her. Sit, please. Hank slid into the booth. Gunner settled at his feet, alert but calm. The dog knew how to be invisible when necessary. Up close, Connie looked frailer than her letters suggested. Thin wrists, liver spots on her hands, but her eyes were sharp, clear. This was a woman who still had all her faculties, who still saw the world with precision. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. I wasn't sure you would. You asked. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. A waitress appeared, young, maybe 21, with red hair pulled back in a ponytail and a name tag that read Autumn. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured coffee for Hank. Can I get you anything else? Her voice was soft, rushed, like she wanted to finish the transaction and disappear. Hank noticed the bruise on her forearm, fading to yellow-green, about 4 days old. Fingerprints, if you knew how to look. 4 distinct marks where someone had grabbed her hard enough to leave evidence. Gunner noticed too. The dog's head lifted slightly, nostrils flaring. He didn't move, didn't make a sound, but Hank felt the shift in attention. Just coffee, Hank said, keeping his voice gentle. Thank you, miss. Autumn nodded, hurried away. Hank watched her go, saw the way she glanced over her shoulder at the kitchen, like she expected someone to come through those doors any second. Connie followed his gaze. She's a good girl, smart, just finished college geology or something. Came back here to help her sick mother. And someone's hurting her. It wasn't a question. Connie's lips pressed into a thin line. This town has problems. Always has, but it's gotten worse. Since when? Since Ray died. The words hung between them like smoke. Hank leaned back, felt the vinyl creak under his weight. You didn't bring me here for a memorial service. No. Connie reached into her purse, a worn leather thing that had probably been with her for decades, and pulled out a small USB drive. She set it on the table between them like a chess piece. Ray left this. I found it in his things after they sent his body home. Hank stared at the drive. What's on it? A video, recorded 3 days before he died. Connie's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Hank, Ray didn't die in that explosion by accident. He was murdered. The world seemed to tilt slightly. The diner sounds, the clink of silverware, the low murmur of conversation, the hiss of the grill, all faded to background noise. Hank's heart thudded once hard against his ribs. Murdered. Yes. By who? Connie glanced around the diner, quick and furtive. No one was paying attention to them, but she lowered her voice anyway. Watch the video first, then we'll talk. But Hank, she reached across the table, gripped his hand with surprising strength. Be careful. I've been sitting on this for 20 years because I was afraid. And then last year, my son Daniel started asking questions. Started investigating. Hank remembered Daniel vaguely. A kid at Ray's funeral, maybe 12 years old. Where's Daniel now? Connie's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed steady. Dead. Car accident, they said. Brake line failed on a mountain road. Brake lines don't just fail. No, they don't. Hank took the USB drive, closed his fist around it. The plastic was warm from Connie's purse, or maybe from the weight of what it contained. 20 years of secrets, 20 years of lies. I'll watch it, he said. Then I'll figure out what to do. You don't have to do anything. I just thought you should know. Ray would have wanted you to know. But they both knew that was a lie. If Connie just wanted him to know, she could have mailed the drive. She'd asked him here because she needed help, because she was scared, because someone had killed her husband and her son, and she was running out of time. Hank understood. He'd spent 20 years running from the guilt of being alive when Ray wasn't. Maybe this was his chance to make it right. The door chimed again. Hank glanced up out of habit, always aware of entrances and exits, a reflex from the core, and saw a man walk in. Big. Maybe 6'3", 240, with the kind of muscle that came from work, not a gym. Flannel shirt with the sleeves torn off, jeans, boots caked with red desert dust, and a face that said he was looking for someone. The man's eyes swept the diner, landed on Autumn. She'd been refilling a napkin dispenser at the counter, but when she saw him, she froze, the color drained from her face. Autumn, the man said. Not loud, but the word carried. Everyone in the diner heard it. Everyone stopped talking. Autumn shook her head, backing up a step. Cade, I'm working, please. Cade. Hank filed the name away. The man started walking toward Autumn, purpose in every step. Not hurried, just inevitable. You think you can ignore my calls? Cade's voice was conversational, almost friendly, the kind of friendly that came right before violence. You think you can just walk away? Autumn backed up another step. Her shoulders hit the pie case. Nowhere left to go. I didn't walk away. I just need some space. Space? Cade laughed, but there was no humor in it. You need space after everything I've done for you. Hank watched Gunner. The dog had gone completely still. Head low, eyes locked on Cade. Not aggressive. Not yet. But ready. Connie whispered, That's Cade Thornton, sheriff's son. Of course he was. Cade reached Autumn, grabbed her arm. The same arm with the bruise. Autumn winced, tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. We're going to talk. Outside. Now. Let me go. I'll let you go when you stop acting like a... Let her go. Hank's voice cut through the diner like a blade. He hadn't planned to speak, hadn't planned to get involved, but some things you didn't ignore, some lines you didn't watch men cross. Cade turned, saw Hank for the first time. His eyes traveled from the gray beard to the leather jacket to the prosthetic leg visible beneath the table's edge. A slow smile spread across his face. Who the hell are you, old man? Hank stood, slow, deliberate. The booth creaked as he shifted his weight, found his balance. Gunner rose with him, a shadow at his side. Someone who knows when a man's out of line. Cade let go of Autumn, turned to face Hank fully. The diner had gone silent. Even the cook had stopped moving, spatula frozen in midair. This ain't your business, cripple. The word hung in the air. Cripple, Hank had heard it before from men better and worse than this one. It used to sting. Now it just was. Maybe not, Hank said quietly, but I'm making it my business. For a long moment, nobody moved. Cade's hands opened and closed at his sides, working through the calculation. Big man used to intimidation working. Probably never been in a real fight in his life, just pushed around people smaller and weaker. Then the door chimed again. The man who walked in wore a sheriff's uniform. 60-ish, iron gray hair, cut military short, a gut that spoke of too many desk years, but shoulders that said he'd been hard once. A badge on his chest read Sheriff D. Thornton. He took in the scene, his son facing down a one-legged biker, the terrified waitress, the silent diner, and his expression didn't change. Cade, he said, just the name. Cade stepping back, hands up in mock surrender. Just talking to Autumn, Dad, no problem here. Sheriff Thornton's eyes shifted to Hank. Cold eyes, evaluator's eyes, cop eyes, but something else underneath. Something calculating. You're new in town, huh? Passing through, Hank said, passing through to where? Nowhere in particular. The sheriff smiled, but it was a snake smile. No warmth, all threat. Well, enjoy your stay, Mr. Mercer. Mr. Mercer, but don't overstay your welcome. Pine Ridge is a quiet town. We like to keep it that way. Translation caused trouble, and you'll regret it. Hank nodded once. The sheriff turned to his son, jerked his head toward the door. Cade followed, but not before shooting one last look at Autumn, a look that promised this wasn't over. When they left, the diner seemed to exhale collectively. Conversation resumed, but quieter now. Wary. Hank sat back down. His coffee had gone cold. Autumn appeared at his elbow, coffee pot in hand. "Thank you," she whispered. Her hands were still shaking. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." She refilled his cup. Hesitated. Then so quietly he almost missed it. "He's going to come back. He always comes back." Before Hank could respond, she was gone, disappearing into the kitchen like smoke. Connie stared at him across the table. "You just made an enemy." "Wouldn't be the first time." "Hank, you don't understand. The Thorntons run this town. The sheriff, his son, his connections. If they want you gone, then I'll leave when I'm ready." Hank touched the USB drive in his pocket. "After I watch this video. After I know what Ray knew." Connie's eyes searched his face. Whatever she saw there seemed to satisfy her because she nodded. "My house is 2 miles north on Route 12. Blue mailbox. You can use my computer there. Tonight. Now, if you want, I don't think—" She paused, choosing words carefully. "I don't think we should wait." Hank understood. 20 years she'd waited, and now that she'd started the ball rolling, every minute felt dangerous. Secrets were like pressure valves. Once you began to release them, they wanted to explode. He stood, dropped a 20 on the table for the coffee he'd barely touched. Gunnar rose with him, always synchronized. As they walked to the door, Hank caught Autumn watching from the kitchen window. Her eyes met his for just a second, and in that second he saw something that made his chest tighten. Hope. Desperate, fragile hope that maybe someone had finally seen her. Outside, the afternoon sun had shifted, throwing long shadows across Main Street. Hank's Harley sat where he'd left it, chrome gleaming. He swung his leg over, settled into the familiar saddle. Gunnar hopped up behind him. 3 taps on the prosthetic. Tap, tap, tap. He turned the key and the engine roared to life. That beautiful, terrible sound that had been his constant companion for 40 years. Freedom and pain all mixed together. Connie's car, an ancient Toyota sedan, pulled out of the parking lot. Hank followed at a respectful distance. As they drove past the sheriff's office, he saw Dalton Thornton standing in the window. Watching. Always watching. Hank didn't look away. Neither did the sheriff. 2 men, each taking the other's measure. Each understanding that something had started here today, something that wouldn't end with polite goodbyes and safe travels. The town limits sign appeared, leaving Pine Ridge. Come back soon. Hank didn't plan on leaving. Not until he knew the truth. Not until he understood what Ray had died for. And maybe, just maybe, not until he'd helped a scared young woman with bruises on her arm and hope in her eyes. The desert stretched ahead, red rocks and blue sky and secrets buried in the dust. Somewhere behind him, Gunnar shifted his weight. The dog sensed it too. The approaching storm. The gathering darkness. They rode north, following Connie's taillights, and Hank thought about Ray. About brotherhood. About the promises men made to the dead. 20 years ago, Ray Aldridge had pushed Hank out of the way of a fireball. Had died so Hank could live. Now maybe it was time to return the favor. To find out who'd really killed Ray and why. To make sure his brother hadn't died for nothing. The Harley's engine rumbled beneath him, steady as a heartbeat. And ahead, in a blue house with a blue mailbox, a USB drive waited. A ghost ready to speak. Part 2. Connie's house sat at the end of a gravel road, exactly where she'd said it would be. Blue mailbox, faded white paint on the clapboard siding, a porch that sagged slightly on the left side. The kind of house that had been built solid in the 50s and was now just holding on through sheer stubbornness. Hank pulled the Harley up beside Connie's Toyota, killed the engine. The silence that followed felt thick, heavy with desert heat and unspoken things. Gunnar jumped down, immediately began a perimeter check, nose to the ground, reading the invisible history written in scent. Connie climbed out of her car, slowly using the doorframe for support. 81 years showed in the careful way she moved the pause before each step. But her eyes were alert, scanning the horizon like she expected trouble. "No one followed us," Hank said. "You sure?" "I'm sure." He'd been checking the mirrors the whole way. Old habits from convoys in Iraq, watching for the telltale signs of a tail. The road had been empty except for one pickup truck that had turned off a mile back. Connie unlocked the front door, stepped inside. Hank followed Gunnar at his heel. The dog's nails clicked on hardwood floors that had been worn smooth by decades of footsteps. Inside, the house smelled like old books and lavender sachets. Photos covered every surface. Ray in his marine dress blues, young and grinning. Ray and Connie on their wedding day. A teenage boy who must have been Daniel holding a baseball bat. A family frozen in time when everyone was still alive, and the future held promise instead of graves. Coffee? Connie asked, already moving toward the kitchen. I'm good. I need to make some. My hands shake if I don't keep them busy. Hank understood. He settled onto a couch that had probably been here since the 80s, watched Connie move through the familiar ritual of scooping grounds, pouring water. Her hands did shake, but they were steady enough. The living room had a desk in the corner, an old Dell computer that was probably running Windows XP. Connie saw him looking. Daniel set it up for me before he died, said I should learn the internet. Her voice caught slightly on died, then steadied. I mostly use it for email and solitaire. The USB will work on it, should. That's where I watched the video the first time. She poured 2 cups of coffee, even though Hank had declined, brought them over. Set one in front of him anyway. Fair warning, it's not easy to watch. Hank took the USB drive from his pocket, turned it over in his fingers. Black plastic, no markings. Just a ghost in a shell, waiting to speak. How long is it? 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Connie sat in a recliner across from him, the leather cracked and faded. Ray's chair, probably. The kind of chair a man settled into after work reading the paper while dinner cooked. I've watched it maybe 50 times, trying to understand. Understand what? Why Ray didn't tell me, why he carried this alone. She sipped her coffee, hands wrapped around the mug like it could ward off cold, even though it was 100 degrees outside. We were married 38 years, Hank. I thought I knew everything about him. Hank stood, walked to the desk. The computer wheezed to life when he pressed the power button, fan rattling like an old man's lungs. Gunnar settled beside the desk, watchful. While the computer booted, Hank looked at the photos on the wall. Ray at 20, fresh out of boot camp. Ray at 30, EOD badge on his chest. Ray at 45, standing beside Hank in Kuwait during Desert Storm, both of them sunburned and grinning like idiots. Brothers. That's what they'd been. Not by blood, but by choice. By the shared experience of staring at bombs and wondering if this would be the one that wrote their names. The computer finally settled, desktop appearing. Hank inserted the USB drive. It took a moment to register, then a single file appeared. Insurance.mov insurance. Ray had known then. Had known that what he was recording could get him killed. Had tried to protect himself, protect Connie by creating evidence. It hadn't worked. Hank double-clicked the file. Windows Media Player opened, buffering. Then the screen filled with Ray's face. He looked older than Hank remembered. Harder. This was Ray 3 days before he died, and he already had the look of a man who'd seen his own death coming. The video quality was poor, shot on what looked like an old camcorder in low light. Ray was sitting in a car, camera propped on the dashboard. Behind him, darkness. The timestamp in the corner read, March 15th, 2006, 11:47 p.m. If someone's watching this, Ray's voice came through the tinny speakers, then I'm already dead. Connie made a small sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Hank wanted to pause, give her a moment, but he couldn't look away. Ray continued, voice low and urgent. My name is Staff Sergeant Raymond Aldridge, United States Marine Corps. I'm recording this as insurance, as testimony, as whatever the hell lawyers call it. 3 weeks ago, I came home on emergency leave. My dad had died. Heart attack, they said. On screen, Ray paused, rubbed his face. Even in the grainy video, Hank could see the exhaustion. I was going through Dad's things when I found a ledger. Dates, amounts, initials. Didn't mean anything to me at first. But then I recognized some of the dates. They matched up with shipments coming through the depot where Dad worked. He was a civilian contractor at the Army depot outside Phoenix. Logistics. The camera shook slightly as Ray adjusted it. Behind him, lights appeared, headlights in the distance. This is where it gets complicated, Ray said, speaking faster now. Dad wasn't just moving supplies. He was moving other things. Weapons, military-grade hardware that was supposed to be decommissioned, destroyed. Instead, it was being diverted, sold. Hank felt something cold settle in his stomach. Arms dealing. Ray's father had been running guns. I didn't want to believe it, Ray continued. My dad was a good man, served in Korea, raised me right. But the numbers don't lie. For 15 years, he helped move weapons out of that depot. And the person coordinating everything, the person whose initials show up on every page. Ray leaned forward, and even through the old video, Hank could see the pain in his friend's eyes. Colonel Ellis Blackwood, our commanding officer. The world tilted. Hank's hands gripped the edge of the desk. Blackwood, their CEO from Desert Storm. The man who'd pinned medals on their chests, who'd given the speeches about honor and duty, who'd sent them into Kuwait City with promises that they were liberating a nation. Blackwood's been running this operation for at least 20 years, Ray said. Maybe longer. He uses military connections to identify weapons marked for destruction, diverts them before they're scrapped, and moves them through civilian contractors, like my dad. Then they disappear into the black market. Probably end up with cartels, militias, whoever's buying. On screen, the headlights got closer. Ray glanced over his shoulder, turned back to the camera. I confronted Blackwood yesterday, told him I knew, told him I had evidence. He laughed, said I couldn't prove anything, that my dad was dead, and couldn't testify that a ledger with initials wasn't enough for a court-martial. Ray's jaw tightened. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. He said, "Ray, you're deploying to Fallujah next week. Urban combat, IEDs everywhere. Would be a shame if something happened to you." Connie stood abruptly, walked to the window. Her back was rigid, hands clasped behind her. Hank couldn't move, couldn't breathe. "So I'm making this insurance," Ray said. "If I die over there, if a bomb gets me or a sniper or anything that looks like combat, you need to know it wasn't an accident." Blackwood said he'd take care of it, said he had people who could make things happen, engineers who could place devices, intelligence officers who could send patrols to the wrong places. Ray leaned close to the camera, and Hank could see the determination in his eyes. The same look he'd had when they'd walked into a minefield in Kuwait, when retreat wasn't an option and forward was the only direction left. "I'm hiding this drive at the house. Connie knows where we talked about hiding places for important documents after 9/11. Remember, sweetheart? The place we joked about." Ray smiled, sad and small. "If something happens to me, get this to the FBI, to the Inspector General, to someone who can't be bought. And Connie, I'm sorry, I'm so damn sorry I brought this into our lives." The headlights on screen were close now, maybe 100 yards. Ray's head snapped toward them. "They're here. The shipment. I'm going to get footage of them unloading. Faces, license plates, everything. If I can." Ray grabbed the camera, and the image became a blur of motion. Then darkness, then a shot of a warehouse lit by floodlights. A semi-truck backed up to a loading dock. 4 men stood waiting. Even in the poor video quality, Hank recognized one of them. Younger, less gray, but unmistakable. Sheriff Dalton Thornton. Ray zoomed in as best he could. The truck's rear doors opened and men began unloading crates. Military crates with stenciled numbers. Ray muttered into the camera, reading them off. Serial numbers. M240, machine guns. Crate of M67 grenades. Jesus Christ. One of the men turned and said something. Everyone froze. Then as one, they turned toward Ray's position. "Shit," Ray whispered. The camera jerked as he ran, footsteps pounding, heavy breathing. The image spun ground sky, a glimpse of Ray's car. Then the camera was thrown onto the passenger seat, and Ray's voice urgent. "If you're watching this, I didn't make it. Tell Hank, tell him I'm sorry. Tell him to look after you, and tell him Semper Fi, always faithful." The engine roared, tires squealed. The camera bounced on the seat, showing glimpses of the roof, the window. Ray's hands white-knuckled on the wheel. Then the video ended. Black screen. Silence. Hank stared at the monitor. His hands were shaking. When had they started shaking? He died 8 days later, Connie said quietly, still facing the window. IED in Fallujah. They said he was clearing a route, that the device was hidden in a dead dog on the side of the road. Standard insurgent tactic. But it wasn't insurgents. No. Connie turned and her eyes were dry now, past tears into something harder. It was Blackwood. Had to be. Ray was right. He had people who could make things happen. And IE'd in a war zone where bombs were everywhere, where Marines died every week. Who would question it? Hank stood on legs that didn't feel entirely steady. The prosthetic seemed heavier than usual, pulling him down. "You said you found this in Ray's hiding place, where false bottom in the bedroom closet. We joked about it during one of those disaster preparedness mode phases. Where would we hide valuables if the world went to hell? Ray built a compartment under the floorboards. I didn't remember until 6 months after he died, when I was going through his things. And you've had it for 20 years. Yes. Why didn't you go to the FBI? The media, someone..." Connie's laugh was bitter. "I tried. 2 months after I found it. Drove to Phoenix, walked into the FBI field office. Told them everything. They took the drive, said they'd investigate. 3 weeks later, an agent came to my house. Said they'd looked into it, found no evidence of wrongdoing. The truck in the video belonged to a legitimate contractor. The men were workers. The serial numbers Ray read off matched weapons that had been properly destroyed according to records. They covered it up. Or Blackwood did. The FBI agent gave me back the drive, said I should let my husband rest in peace. Stop spreading conspiracy theories that dishonored his memory." Connie's hands clenched. I tried one more time 2 years later. Different agent, same office. That time they didn't even give me the courtesy of an investigation. Just told me grief does strange things to people. Hank walked to the window, stood beside her. Outside, the desert stretched endless. Somewhere out there, Ellis Blackwood was living his life, retired with honors probably, pension and benefits and the gratitude of a nation that didn't know he'd been selling its weapons to the highest bidder. What about Daniel? Hank asked. You said he started investigating. Last year, he'd been asking questions about his grandfather, Ray's dad. Wanted to know about his life. I finally told him about the ledger, about the video. I shouldn't have. Connie's voice broke. He was so angry. Said he was going to find evidence, going to expose Blackwood, even if the FBI wouldn't help. He started digging, asking questions around town, talking to people who'd worked at the depot. And then his brakes failed. On Highway 89 coming down from Flagstaff, his car went off a cliff. The investigators said the brake line had corroded, natural wear and tear. She turned to face Hank. My son was a mechanic. He maintained his own vehicles. His brakes don't just fail. Gunner stirred, walked to the door, then back, restless. The dog sensed the tension, the rising danger. Hank understood what Connie was asking, even if she hadn't said it directly. She wanted him to do what the FBI wouldn't, what her son had died trying to do. She wanted him to expose Blackwood, to make Ray's death mean something. But 20 years was a long time. Evidence got lost, memories faded, and Blackwood would be prepared now after Daniel's questions had tipped him off that someone was still digging. There's more, Connie said. She walked to the desk, pulled open a drawer, and retrieved a folder. Manila worn at the edges. Daniel found this before he died. I didn't even know he had it until I was cleaning out his apartment. She handed the folder to Hank. Inside were documents, printouts from the county recorder's office, property deeds, business licenses. Hank scanned them, his trained eye picking out the relevant details. A mining company called Desert Lithium, LLC, incorporated 5 years ago. Property purchases throughout the county, all parcels on what was officially Bureau of Land Management territory. Public land. Lithium, Hank looked up. The new gold rush, Connie said. Electric cars need lithium batteries. Arizona has some of the richest deposits in the country. Whoever controls those deposits controls billions of dollars. Hank flipped through more pages. The majority shareholder of Desert Lithium LLC was listed as a corporation which was owned by another corporation, shell companies stacked on shell companies. But Daniel had done the work, following the paper trail through layers of obfuscation. At the end of it all, one name appeared, Ellis Blackwood. He's moved on from guns to mining, Hank said slowly. Not moved on, expanded. According to Daniel's notes, Blackwood uses his old military connections to access restricted land. Public land that's supposed to be protected, but with the right permits and the right bribes, he can extract whatever he wants. Lithium, copper, rare earth minerals. All of it through shell companies that can't be traced back to him directly. And Sheriff Thornton, local muscle, his family's been in Pine Ridge for generations. He controls what happens here, makes sure no one asks too many questions. If someone does, she gestured at the folder. Brake lines fail, heart attacks happen, accidents. Hank set the folder down, his mind working through the implications. This wasn't just about revenge for Ray anymore. This was about an ongoing criminal enterprise, one that had been operating for decades and showed no signs of stopping. The sound of engines cut through the quiet. Multiple motorcycles, the distinctive rumble of Harleys. Gunner's ears perked up. Hank moved to the window. 5 bikes rolled up the gravel road, chrome gleaming in the late afternoon sun. They pulled into a loose formation in front of the house, engines cutting off in sequence. 5 men climbed off, all wearing the same patch Hank wore, Iron Brotherhood MC Tucson chapter. Luther Kane led them, wrenched 65 years old and built like a fire hydrant, graying beard down to his chest. Behind him came Vernon Hayes, preacher, thin and tall with the calm demeanor that had earned his road name. Then Otis Webb, Rattlesnake, moving with the careful precision of a man who'd spent years behind a sniper scope. Floyd Briggs, Hammer, stocky and powerful engineer's eyes taking in every detail of the house's construction. And finally, Silas Montgomery, Doc, who'd stitched up more Marines in field hospitals than most doctors saw in a career. Brothers, not by blood, by choice. Hank opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. Gunner followed, tail wagging once in recognition. "Look you long enough," Hank said. Wrench grinning. Had to stop for gas and food. And Preacher needed to find a clean bathroom, 'cause apparently truck stop facilities aren't good enough for his delicate constitution. "It was disgusting," Preacher said mildly. "There are standards." The others laughed at easy camaraderie that came from years of riding together. But their eyes were sharp, scanning the surroundings, cataloging threats. These were men who'd been in bad situations before and knew how to read the signs. Hank descended the porch steps, gripped Wrench's hand. Thanks for coming. You called. We came. That's how it works. Wrench's expression turned serious. So what kind of trouble are we looking at? The kind that got my best friend killed 20 years ago. The kind that might get us killed too if we're not careful. Well, hell, Rattlesnake drawled. Here I thought this was going to be boring. Connie appeared in the doorway, and 5 bikers immediately straightened, a reflex of old-school manners. You could take the men out of the Corps, but you couldn't take the Corps out of the men. Ma'am, they said in unison. She smiled despite everything. You boys hungry? I've got pot roast in the slow cooker. Ma'am, we're always hungry, Doc said, but we don't want to impose. It's not imposing if I'm offering. And you're going to need your strength. She looked at Hank. Tell them. They should know what they're getting into. So Hank did. Standing there in Connie's driveway with the sun starting to dip toward the horizon, he told them about Ray, about Blackwood, about the weapons trafficking and the mining operation, and the dead son and the waitress with bruises on her arm. He told them about a town called Pine Ridge, where the law was corrupt and justice was a memory. When he finished, the brothers were quiet for a long moment. Then Wrench spoke. So we're going up against a colonel, a sheriff, and whoever else Blackwood has on his payroll. Looks like. And we've got, what, a 20-year-old video and some property records. That's about it. No FBI support, no local law enforcement we can trust. Nope. Wrench looked at the others. They nodded, some kind of silent communication passing between them. Then he turned back to Hank. When do we start? Relief flooded through Hank, though he kept it off his face. Tonight, we need to know what we're dealing with. Rattlesnake, think you can do some reconnaissance, get eyes on the mining operation without being seen. Does a snake shed its skin? Hammer, I need you to look at a car. Brake line supposedly failed on Highway 89. Might be at an impound shop, might be at a scrapyard. Either way, I need to know if it was tampered with. Hammer nodded. Consider it done. Doc, there's a girl at the diner, waitress named Autumn. She's scared, possibly in danger. I need you to make contact, assess the situation. You still carry your medical kit. Always. Good. If she's hurt, help her. If she needs to disappear, help her with that too. And me, Preacher asked. You and I are going to have a conversation with Sheriff Thornton. Nothing aggressive, just 2 concerned citizens asking questions about a tragic accident involving Connie's son. Concerned citizens who happen to be bikers. Exactly. Wrench cracked his knuckles. What about me? You're going to do what you do best. Get into places you're not supposed to be and find things people want to keep hidden. A slow smile spread across Wrench's face. Now that sounds like a good time. Connie watched this exchange with something like wonder. You're really going to help? Ma'am, Preacher said gently, your husband saved Hank's life. That makes him our brother too. And we don't leave brothers unavenged. The sun touched the horizon, painting the desert in shades of orange and red. Long shadows stretched across the gravel driveway. Inside the house, the slow cooker hummed, filling the air with the smell of home cooking. For a moment, it felt almost normal. Like this could be just a gathering of friends, a dinner party, nothing more than stories and laughter. But Gunner sat at attention, watching the road. And somewhere in this town, a sheriff's son was planning his next move on a scared young woman. Somewhere, a colonel who'd betrayed his oath was counting money made from blood and theft. And somewhere, Ray Aldridge's ghost was waiting for someone to finally speak his truth. Hank looked at his brothers, these men who'd dropped everything and ridden 200 miles because he'd asked. Who'd walk into fire for him without hesitation? Let's eat, he said. Then we ride. They filed into Connie's house, boots heavy on the floorboards. The living room that had been so quiet now filled with voices, with the sound of men who'd been to war and come back changed, but not broken. Connie served pot roast and potatoes while Hank set up Ray's video on the laptop, showed the brothers what they were dealing with. They watched in silence, faces hardening, as Blackwood's name was spoken, as the footage of weapons being unloaded played out. When it ended, Doc spoke first. We can't go to the authorities. No. So this is off the books. Vigilante justice. If that's what it takes. Some of us have records. We get arrested, we do not get out easy. I know. Doc nodded slowly. Just wanted to make sure we're all clear on the stakes. They ate. They planned. And as night fell over Pine Ridge, 6 motorcycles sat in a row outside a widow's house, chrome reflecting starlight. Inside, men who'd sworn oaths to defend their country, prepared to break its laws in the name of a higher justice. And in the corner, a German shepherd named Gunnar kept watch, knowing in the way animals know that the storm was about to break. The plan was simple. Too simple, probably, which meant it would go wrong in ways they couldn't predict. But simple plans were the ones that worked when chaos hit, and chaos always hit. Thursday night, 48 hours before the mining equipment was scheduled to arrive. 48 hours to gather enough evidence to bury Blackwood and everyone in his pocket. Rattlesnake and Hammer left first, disappearing into the desert darkness on their bikes. No headlights, just 2 shadows moving north toward the mine. They'd done this before in places a lot more dangerous than Arizona. Iraq, Afghanistan, places where the wrong move meant a body bag. Wrench headed south toward Phoenix, a laptop bag slung over his shoulder. Inside were the forged permits, the shell company documents, everything Daniel had died trying to expose. Wrench had contacts in the state attorney general's office, people who owed him favors from his Navy days, people who couldn't be bought. Doc and Preacher stayed at Connie's house watching over the women, both men armed, both alert. Hank had seen that look before, the quiet readiness of men who'd stand their ground until they couldn't stand anymore, which left Hank and Gunnar. They rode through Pine Ridge at 11:45, the Harley's engine a low growl in the sleeping town. Past dark storefronts and silent houses. Past the sheriff's office where a single light burned in the back room. Past the church with its peeling steeple. The desert air was cool now, carrying the scent of sage and creosote. Stars spread overhead like scattered diamonds. Beautiful country. Shame it was rotting from the inside. Hank's phone buzzed. Text from Rattlesnake. At the mine, heavy activity. They're moving everything. Need you here ASAP. He twisted the throttle, the Harley surging forward. But Gunnar shifted behind him, that subtle movement that meant the dog sensed something wrong. Then the dog did something he'd never done before. He barked, sharp, insistent, the kind of bark that meant immediate danger. Hank slowed, looking around. Empty street, dark buildings, nothing obvious. Gunnar barked again, louder now. His body vibrated with urgency. What is it, boy? The dog's head was turned toward Rosie's diner, still 100 yards ahead. The neon sign buzzed in the darkness. OIE. Hank's combat instincts kicked in. If Gunnar was this agitated, there was a reason. The dog had saved his life in Fallujah by refusing to move forward, had detected an IEED buried in concrete impossible to see, but Gunnar had known. He pulled into the diner's parking lot, killed the engine. Through the windows he could see the interior. Maybe 20 customers scattered across booths. More than usual for this hour. A family with 2 kids, a group of truckers, an elderly couple. Normal people living normal lives. Behind the counter, Jolene worked the register, her dyed blonde hair catching the fluorescent light. Gunnar jumped down from the bike, didn't wait for Hank, just walked straight toward the diner's front door, moving with purpose. Hank followed, hand instinctively checking his sidearm. The M1911 was there, loaded, safety off. 45 years of muscle memory. The bell chimed when he pushed through the door. Conversation continued. Forks scraped plates. Coffee cups clinked. Nobody noticed the one-legged biker and his German shepherd except Jolene, whose professional smile appeared instantly. Welcome back. Coffee? Sure. Hank moved toward the counter, but Gunnar didn't follow. The dog stopped in the middle of the diner, right in the center of the checkered linoleum floor, between the booths and the counter and the tables. Then he sat, ramrod straight, perfectly still. Head up, ears forward, eyes locked on something. Not something. Someone. Jolene. The diner went quiet. Conversations died mid-sentence. The trucker stopped eating. The family with kids turned to look. The elderly couple froze. Everyone stared at the dog, because Gunnar wasn't moving, wasn't making a sound. Just sitting there like a statue, every line of his body screaming alert. Hank had seen this before. In Iraq, when Gunnar had detected a suicide bomber in a marketplace, the dog had done exactly this. Sat down, locked on target, refused to move until the threat was neutralized. Gunnar, Hank said quietly. Report. The dog didn't budge, didn't even blink, just stared at Jolene with the focused intensity of a predator. Jolene's smile wavered. Is your dog okay? He's kind of freaking people out. He's fine, he's working. Working on what? Detecting threats. Hank walked slowly toward the counter, watching Jolene's hands. He's trained to find explosives, weapons, people who mean harm. The color drained from Jolene's face. I don't know what you're talking about. Then why are you reaching under the counter? Her hand froze. The diner was absolutely silent now. 20 people holding their breath. Ma'am, Hank said, voice calm but carrying authority, I need you to step away from the register. Put your hands where I can see them. You can't just come in here and... Gunner doesn't point at people unless they're dangerous. And right now he's telling me, you're the most dangerous person in this room. Jolene's eyes darted to the back door, to the phone on the wall, to the customers who were starting to understand something was very wrong. One of the truckers stood up, big man 40-ish wearing a Peterbilt cap. Sir, you need to leave this lady alone. Appreciate the concern, Hank said, not taking his eyes off Jolene. But that lady's been working for a criminal enterprise for 20 years. She's the one who called in tips when people asked too many questions. She's the reason Daniel Aldridge is dead. That's a lie. Jolene's voice cracked. I never heard anyone. You made a phone call, told Ellis Blackwood that Daniel was investigating. 3 days later, Daniel drove off a cliff. Hank took another step forward. That's accessory to murder in any court in America. The trucker sat back down. The family gathered their kids closer. The elderly woman clutched her husband's hand. Gunner, Hank said, show me. The dog stood, walked slowly toward the counter, stopped 6 feet away, sat again, stared at Jolene's apron, at the bulge in the pocket. What's in your pocket, ma'am? Nothing, just a phone. Then show me, slow. Jolene's hand trembled as she reached into the apron, pulled out a cell phone. But Gunner didn't relax. The dog's focus intensified. The other pocket. There's nothing. The other pocket. Hank's voice hardened. Or I let Gunner search you himself. And when he finds weapons, these good people will know you were lying. For a long moment, Jolene stood there, tears streaming down her face, makeup running, looking older than her 58 years. Then she pulled out a small revolver. Smith & Wesson .3, 8 special, 5 rounds, hammer back. The diner erupted, people screaming, chairs scraping. The trucker dove behind his booth. The mother covered her children. Put it on the counter, Hank said, slow. I wasn't going to use it, I swear. It's just for protection. Protection from who? From him, from Blackwood. He said I might need it if things went bad. She set the gun down with shaking hands. He gave it to me after Daniel died, said there might be more people asking questions, said I should be ready. Hank moved forward, secured the weapon, checked the chamber, fully loaded, 1 in each cylinder, ready to fire. How long have you been working for Blackwood? 20 years, since Ray Aldridge started poking around. Blackwood needed eyes in town, someone to watch who came and went, report anything unusual. Jolene's voice broke. I didn't have a choice. He said if I didn't help, my diner would burn down. My insurance would be denied. I'd lose everything. So you sold your soul instead. What would you have done? You don't say no to men like Blackwood, not in a town like this. The back door burst open. Sheriff Dalton Thornton stepped through, hand on his weapon. Behind him, his deputy, a younger man with nervous eyes. Put your hands up, Mercer. Hank didn't move. For you swear? Your informant just confessed to being an accessory to murder. You going to arrest her, or are you going to protect her? Thornton's jaw tightened. He looked at Jolene, at the gun on the counter, at Gunner, still sitting alert, reading the scene. What's going on here, Jolene? He knows. That damn dog knew. She wiped her eyes, smearing mascara. I can't do this anymore, Dalton. I can't keep lying. Can't keep watching people die because I made a phone call. Shut up, Thornton hissed. Don't say another word. Why? So we can keep protecting Blackwood. Keep pretending we're good people while he sells weapons to cartels and buries anyone who gets in his way. She laughed high and broken. Daniel Aldridge was 26 years old. He had a fiancée. He was going to be a father. And I sent him to his death with 1 phone call. The deputy shifted uncomfortably. Sheriff, maybe we should... Stay out of this, Sam. Hank's phone buzzed. He checked it carefully, keeping Thornton in his peripheral vision. Text from Rattlesnake urgent. Building rigged with C4. 500 plus pounds. Timer set for 0200 hours. 90 minutes. Someone locked inside. Female, can't identify. Hank's blood turned to ice. He looked at Thornton. Where's Autumn? What? Autumn McKinley? The waitress? Where is she? Thornton's face went blank. The professional mask. How should I know? Because your son's been tracking her since we took her to Connie's house. Because Blackwood needs her dead before she can testify about the lithium surveys. Hank stepped forward. Where is she? Even if I knew, I wouldn't tell you. Hank moved faster than a 67-year-old man with a prosthetic leg should be able to move. Crossed the distance, grabbed Thornton's shirt, slammed him against the wall hard enough to knock pictures loose. The deputy drew his weapon. Let him go. Shoot me and you'll never find her before the building blows. Hank's face was inches from Thornton's. 500 pounds of C4, 90 minutes. Your boss is cleaning house, destroying evidence, and he's willing to murder an innocent woman to do it. Something in Thornton's eyes shifted. Fear. Real fear. He said she'd be relocated. Protective custody. He lied, just like he lied to you about Ray Aldridge, about Daniel, about everyone. Hank released him. You know what happened to Ray Blackwood? Ordered him killed. Had someone plant an IED in Fallujah. Made it look like combat. Ray died because he found out about the weapons trafficking. That's not true. It is. I've got video. Ray recorded everything before he deployed. Knew Blackwood was going to kill him. Left evidence. Hank pulled out his phone, showed Thornton the still frame from Ray's video. The warehouse. The truck. The younger version of Thornton unloading weapons crates. You've been part of this since the beginning, but you can still do the right thing. Thornton stared at the image, at his younger self, at 20 years of choices that had led him here. If I help you, Blackwood will kill me. If you don't help, Autumn dies. And when the state AG shows up tomorrow with those forged permits and shell company documents, you go down as a co-conspirator in murder and arms trafficking. Federal prison, life sentence. Hank leaned in. Or you help us save that girl, testify against Blackwood, and maybe you get a deal. The sheriff looked old, defeated. The mine. North Warehouse. That's where they take people who need to disappear. How many guards? 6. Private security, former military. They're not rent-a-cops, they're professionals. So are we. Hank turned to the diner full of terrified civilians. Everybody out. Now, this is an active investigation. You didn't see anything, you don't know anything. Go home. Lock your doors. People scrambled. The truckers threw money on their tables and ran. The family rushed their kids outside. The elderly couple moved faster than they probably had in years. In 90 seconds, the diner was empty, except for Hank, Gunner, Thornton, the deputy, and Jolene. You too, Hank said to Jolene, go to the county jail. Turn yourself in. Tell them everything. You might get a deal if you cooperate. She nodded, grabbed her purse, fled. Hank looked at Thornton. You're coming with me. You're deputy too. We're going to save that girl and shut down Blackwood's operation tonight. There are 6 guards. You've got 1 gun and a dog. I've got 5 brothers who've been waiting for the signal to move. Hank pulled out his phone, sent a group text, go. Full assault, mine warehouse, 85 minutes. Responses came back instantly. Wrench en route, ET, 20 minutes. Rattlesnake, in position, ready to engage. Hammer copy, moving in. Doc, on our way. Preacher, the righteous shall inherit the earth. Let's help them along. Hank looked at Gunner. The dog was on his feet now, ready, always ready. Let's ride. They burst out of the diner. Hank's Harley roared to life. Thornton and his deputy climbed into the patrol car, 3 vehicles racing north into the desert, headlights cutting through darkness. Hank's phone rang. He answered on the helmet comm. Hank, it was Connie's voice, shaking but determined. Autumn's not here. She left a note. Said she couldn't let you fight her battles. Said she was going to turn herself into Blackwood. Stop the violence. When, man? An hour ago, she took my car. An hour. She'd be at the mine by now. Probably already locked in that warehouse with the timer counting down. Connie, stay with Doc and Preacher. Don't open the door for anyone. Bring her back, Hank. She's just a girl. She deserves better than this. I know. I will. He disconnected. Pushed the Harley harder. 80 miles an hour on a dark desert road. 90. The prosthetic leg vibrated against the floorboard. Gunner's body pressed against his back, solid and reassuring. The mine appeared ahead. Floodlights illuminating the main building. The warehouse set back darker. Guard shack at the entrance. Chain link fence topped with razor wire. Hank killed, his lights slowed. Thornton's patrol car pulled alongside. There's a service entrance on the east side, Thornton said through his window. No cameras. I can get you in. Do it. They circled around. The service gate was locked, but Thornton had a key. The chain fell away, and they rolled through. Ahead, the warehouse sat quiet. Too quiet. Hank's phone buzzed. Text from Rattlesnake guards on the move. Something spooked them. 3 heading to north perimeter. 3 staying at warehouse. Then another text. Wait. Vehicle approaching main gate. Black SUV. Tinted windows. Hank knew. Felt it in his bones. Ellis Blackwood had come to watch his empire burn. They parked in shadows behind a storage building. Hank dismounted, checked his pistol. 7 rounds. Not enough. Never enough. Thornton stepped out of the patrol car, drew his service weapon. Glock 22. 15 rounds. The deputy did the same. Whatever happens, Hank said, Autumn gets out alive. That's the mission. Everything else is secondary. What about Blackwood? If he gets in the way, we go through him. Gunner's ears swiveled. The dog's head turned toward the warehouse. A low whine escaped his throat. He'd found her. Even from 100 yards away through concrete walls, Gunner knew she was there. Good boy. Let's go get her. They moved. 3 men and a dog crossing open ground toward a building rigged to explode in 73 minutes. Rattlesnake's voice came through Hank's phone, barely a whisper. You've got 3 guards at the warehouse door, armed with AR-15s. Body armor. They're expecting trouble. Can you take them? Negative. Angle's wrong. I'd get 1, maybe 2. The 3rd would light you up before you got close. Then we need a distraction. Thornton spoke. I'm still sheriff. Let me walk up. Official business. They know me. They'll know you've flipped. Maybe, maybe not. Either way, I can get close, give you an opening. Hank studied him, looking for the lie, for the betrayal. But all he saw was a tired man trying to do one right thing after 30 years of wrong ones. Okay, but Sheriff, if this is a setup, Gunner will know, and he won't give you a chance to explain. Fair enough. Thornton walked forward, hands visible, no weapon drawn, just a law enforcement officer approaching his own people. The guards tensed. Rifles came up, not quite pointing at him, but ready. Evening, boys, Thornton called. Colonel Blackwood asked me to check on the situation. We weren't told you were coming. Last-minute change. He's concerned about the timeline. Thornton kept walking, getting closer, 30 yards, 20. Wants to make sure the package is secure. Package is fine. You can tell the colonel everything's on schedule. I need to verify personally. That's not protocol. 15 yards. Protocol is what I say it is. Now open that door or I'm calling Blackwood and telling him you refused a direct order from the sheriff. The guards exchanged looks, uncertain. The hierarchy was breaking down. Nobody knew who to trust anymore. 10 yards. 1 guard lowered his rifle. Sir, we have orders not to. Thornton drew and fired in one smooth motion. Center mass. The guard dropped. The other 2 guards spun trying to acquire targets, but Thornton was already moving. Old combat reflexes kicking in. He hit the ground, rolled, came up firing. The 2nd guard went down. The 3rd guard got his rifle up, finger on the trigger. A rifle shot cracked from the darkness. The guard's head snapped back. He collapsed. Rattlesnake's voice, got him, you're clear. Hank and Gunner sprinted forward. The deputy right behind them. They reached the warehouse door. Locked. Electronic keypad. Thornton was on his feet, blood on his shirt from a graze. Code is 0315. Hank punched it in. The lock clicked. The door swung open. Inside darkness. The smell of chemicals and concrete. And something else. C4, unmistakable. Like Play-Doh and almonds. Gunner barked once, sharp, directional. They followed, through the warehouse, past crates and equipment, to a back room. The door was steel, reinforced. Another keypad. Same code, Thornton said. Hank entered it. The door opened. Autumn sat on the floor, hands zip-tied behind her back. Duct tape over her mouth. When she saw them, tears streamed down her face. Hank knelt, cut the zip ties, peeled off the tape gently. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I thought if I turned myself in, if I gave them what they wanted, you'd all be safe. I'm so sorry. It's okay. We're getting you out. The bombs, they told me. The whole building, they said I'd never feel it. How long? 2 a.m. That's what they said. Hank checked his watch. 61 minutes. They ran. Out of the room, through the warehouse, toward the exit. The lights came on, blinding. Floodlights from all directions. A voice over a loudspeaker. Calm. Cultured. The voice from the phone call. Sergeant Mercer, I should have known you wouldn't take the deal. Ellis Blackwood stood in the warehouse doorway, 70 years old but still solid, still carrying himself like a colonel. He held a detonator in one hand. Let them go, Blackwood. This is between you and me. Nothing is between you and me, Sergeant. You're a ghost I should have buried 20 years ago alongside Ray Aldridge. Blackwood's thumb hovered over the detonator button. But I've always been thorough. That's why I'm still here and Ray isn't. You murdered him. Your own man. I eliminated a security risk. Ray couldn't let things go. Couldn't accept that some battles aren't worth fighting. Blackwood smiled. He thought he was protecting Connie by leaving that video. All he did was sign her death warrant. And yours. The state AG has everything. The forged permits, the shell companies, your entire operation. I'll be in Mexico before they file charges. I've got accounts in Grand Cayman, property in Costa Rica. They'll never touch me. But they'll know, everyone will know what you did. And I'll live with that knowledge in luxury while you die here with your principles. Blackwood's thumb pressed down. Nothing happened. Blackwood looked at the detonator, pressed again. Still nothing. Looking for this, Rattlesnake's voice echoed through the warehouse. He emerged from shadows holding a small black box. Found the receiver. Cut the wires. You're done. Blackwood's composure cracked. There are backups, redundancies. We found those too. Hammer appeared from another direction. 60 pounds of C4 scattered across this building. All of it disarmed. All of it evidence. Blackwood reached for a weapon. Hank fired first. Not to kill, to wound. The shot took Blackwood in the shoulder. He spun dropped. Guards emerged from everywhere, but not Blackwood's guards. State police. 12 officers in tactical gear. Weapons drawn. A woman in a business suit stepped forward. Mid-40s carrying a badge. Ellis Blackwood, you're under arrest for weapons trafficking, murder conspiracy to commit murder, and about 40 other charges I'll read when we get you processed. She looked at Hank. You, Mercer. Yeah. Your friend Wrench called us 2 hours ago. Gave us everything. We've been setting up since midnight. She smiled. Hell of a thing bringing down a colonel. He stopped being a colonel the day he started selling weapons. They led Blackwood away. He didn't fight, didn't speak. Just walked with the bearing of a man who'd lost everything but refused to show it. Thornton stood in the warehouse entrance, hands raised, waiting for his own arrest. The state police took him too, but gently. He'd be processed, charged, but he'd get his deal for cooperating. The deputy surrendered without resistance. Autumn collapsed into Hank's arms, sobbing with relief. Gunner pressed against her legs, offering comfort the way only dogs could. The brothers emerged from the darkness, Wrench still covered in road dust from the ride. Rattlesnake rifle slung across his back. Hammer carrying a laptop full of evidence. Doc and Preacher arriving last, but ready. Everyone accounted for, Hank asked. Everyone, Wrench confirmed. They stood there in the floodlights as dawn began to paint the eastern sky. 6 old men in a dome, victorious, exhausted, alive. The lead investigator approached. We're going to need statements from all of you. This is going to take days to process. We've got time, Hank said. He looked at Autumn, at the brothers, at Gunner sitting calmly despite the chaos, at Ray's dog tags hanging from his jacket zipper. All the time in the world. 6 months later, Rosie's diner looked different with new ownership. The sign had been fixed. All the letters worked now. Fresh paint on the walls. New booths. But the coffee was the same, strong and bitter and exactly what you needed on a cold morning. Hank sat in the corner booth, Gunner at his feet, the booth by the window, where he'd first met Connie 6 months ago, where this had all started. The diner was busy, Saturday morning rush, families, truckers, locals who'd lived through the scandal and decided to stay anyway. Autumn worked the counter, her red hair pulled back, smile genuine now. No fear in her eyes. She'd bought the diner with money from the reward the state AG had given her for testimony, turned it into something good. Her mother had been moved to a facility in Tucson. Better care, close enough for Autumn to visit twice a week. The Alzheimer's was winning, but there were good days still. Connie came through the door, moving slowly but steady, 81 years old and still sharp. She slid into the booth across from Hank. Morning? Morning, Connie. Read the paper today. Not yet. She slid it across. Front page. Blackwood sentenced to life in federal prison. Hank scanned the article. No parole. 30 counts. They'd gotten him on everything. Weapons trafficking, murder for hire, conspiracy, money laundering. The judge had called it one of the most extensive criminal enterprises in Arizona history. Good, Hank said simply. Thornton got 8 years. He'll be out in 5 with good behavior. He earned it. Without his testimony, we might not have gotten Blackwood. Cade got probation, anger management, restraining order. Also fair. They sat in comfortable silence. Autumn brought coffee without being asked. Set down 2 cups, smiled, moved on. The door chimed. A young man walked in, maybe 30, military haircut, army jacket, walking with the careful gait of someone still getting used to a prosthetic leg. He looked around the diner lost, uncertain. The way combat veterans looked when they came home and realized home had changed while they were gone. Or maybe they'd changed too much to fit anymore. Hank stood, slow, the prosthetic always stiff in the morning. He walked over to the young man. "Morning, son. Looking for something?" The veteran's eyes flicked to Hank's leg. Recognition. "Just coffee, maybe some breakfast." "Booth's open in the corner. Good spot. You can see the door from there." Understanding passed between them. The need to watch exits, to keep your back to the wall. Things civilians never understood. "Thanks." The young man started to walk away, then stopped. "You Iron Brotherhood." Hank touched the patch on his jacket. "Tucson chapter. You ride?" "Used to." "Before?" He gestured at his leg. "Not sure I can anymore. I ride at a Harley with one leg. Built a custom setup. Works fine." Hank pulled out his wallet, handed the kid a business card. "Ray's Legacy Garage. We teach veterans how to ride again. Free lessons, free modifications. Just gotta show up." The young man took the card, studied it. "Why?" "Because somebody did it for me once, and because we don't leave brothers behind." Hank extended his hand. "Hank Mercer." Tyler Morrison." "Good to meet you, Tyler. Grab that booth. Coffee's on me." Tyler walked to the corner booth, sat where Hank had been sitting, where he could watch the door, where he felt safe. Gunner patted over, settled at Tyler's feet without being asked. The young man's hand dropped automatically to the dog's head. Found comfort there. Hank returned to the counter, stood beside Connie. "Another lost one?" she asked. "Another one coming home?" "You can't save them all." "No, but I can save the ones who walk through that door." Outside, the sound of motorcycles. 5 Harleys pulling into the parking lot. Wrench Preacher, Rattlesnake, Hammer, and Doc. The Iron Brotherhood Tucson chapter. Though they were spending more time in Pine Ridge these days, they filed in, brought the smell of leather and road dust in Brotherhood. Took seats at the counter, ordered coffee and eggs and bacon. Normal. Ordinary. Like they hadn't taken down a criminal empire 6 months ago. Like they were just old men having breakfast. Autumn refilled cups, took orders, smiled. "Safe now, free." The morning sun streamed through the windows, warm and golden. Hank looked at Ray's dog tags hanging from his jacket. Thought about that night in Fallujah, about the fireball, about 20 years of guilt. "Paid my debt, brother," he whispered. "Finally paid it." Connie touched his arm. "Ray would be proud." "Maybe. Or maybe he'd tell me I was a stubborn old fool who should have let it go." "Probably both," Hank smiled. "Probably." Tyler was talking to Gunner, quiet words Hank couldn't hear, but the young man was smiling, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. Another one coming home. The brothers laughed at something Wrench said. Preacher blessed the food. Doc told a terrible joke. Hammer and Rattlesnake argued about the best route to Flagstaff. Family, not by blood, by choice. Hank's phone buzzed, text from a number he didn't recognize. "Heard about what you did in Pine Ridge. I've got a situation in New Mexico. Could use some help." "Can you ride?" he showed Connie. She raised an eyebrow. "What are you going to tell them?" Hank looked at his brothers. At Gunner. At the corner booth where a lost veteran was finding his way home. At the open road visible through the window. He typed back, "When do you need us?" The response came immediately. "Soon as you can get here," Hank smiled. 67 years old. One leg, a lifetime of scars, and more road ahead than behind. He finished his coffee, stood, whistled for Gunner. "Where are you going?" Connie asked. "New Mexico. Someone needs help." "You just got back." "I know. That's why I have to go." He kissed her cheek. "Take care of Tyler. Make sure he comes to the garage." "I will. Be safe, Hank." "Always am." He walked out into the Arizona morning. The brothers followed without question. That was Brotherhood. 6 Harleys sat in a row, chrome gleaming in the sun. Hank swung his leg over his bike. 3 taps on the prosthetic. Tap, tap, tap. Gunner jumped up behind him, settled in. The engine roared to life. That beautiful, terrible sound. Freedom and pain and purpose, all mixed together. They rode out of Pine Ridge, 6 men and a dog, heading for New Mexico, for the next fight, for the next person who needed help. Because that's what they did. That's what brothers do. The desert stretched ahead, endless, beautiful, full of secrets and stories and people who needed someone to stand up when everyone else sat down. And Hank Mercer, one-legged biker, crippled old man playing soldier, rode into it with a smile. Still breathing, still fighting, still keeping the promise he'd made 20 years ago. Semper Fi, always faithful. The Harleys disappeared into the desert heat, chrome flashing like stars. And somewhere in a place beyond pain and war and broken promises, Ray Aldridge just smiled. His brother had finally come home.